"You're being ridiculous," as she said, biting into corn on the cob like she hadn't just handed me a live grenade. "It's just flirtation. It keeps me in the running." That was the line, the kind you remember word for word because it hums in your ears long after the laughter fades. We were at her sister's house, the smoke curling from the grill, red plastic cups in everyone's hands. The kids were throwing footballs. Adults were pretending to care about the game. And my wife, 43, beautiful in that meticulous, high-effort way women reserve for boardrooms and war zones, was showing her phone screen to her sister like it was a joke. Except I wasn't laughing, and neither was her sister. "It's harmless," she added, louder this time, because I was now standing behind her. She looked back at me over her shoulder, the way you might glance at a decorative lawn gnome, stationary, silent, vaguely in the way. "What keeps you in the running?" I asked casually, as if my heart wasn't tap dancing in my ribcage. She waved her hand like I was a fly. "You're being childish. It's not like I'm sleeping with him." Ah, there it is, the classic. Not denying the behavior, just qualifying it by absence of penetration. I nodded and took a sip of my drink, which suddenly tasted like vinegar. My brother-in-law chuckled awkwardly and changed the subject to car leases. It's funny how betrayal starts with small allowances. A flirt here, a working late there. But when someone you've built a home with refers to your growing suspicion as a sign of immaturity, you don't push. You observe, you wait. Because sometimes the only way to survive being treated like a joke is to become the punchline with a better setup. She had the audacity to treat it like I was the problem, like my discomfort with her boss texting her at midnight was some generational insecurity I needed to work through. And hey, while you're here, if you've read this far, do me one favor, click subscribe. Over 90% of you just read and bounce, but it helps the team a ton if you hit that button. Keeps these stories coming. Now, back to my charming, politically astute wife. She started dressing sharper, tighter, blue mostly. She never used to wear blue. "He says it brings out my eyes," she said once offhand while curling her hair. When I raised an eyebrow, she added, "It's networking, not a romance novel." You ever see a woman smile while texting, then flip the phone over like she's hiding a poker hand? That's not networking, that's curating. She stopped mentioning his name altogether. At first, she referred to him as Gerald, then my manager. Eventually, it was just they, like she was working for a corporation of ghosts. I'd ask how work was. She'd say intense and leave it at that. No stories, no annoying coworkers, no stress rants, just vague praise and empty words, which is why it stood out when I heard her laughing in the garage. Loud, full-bodied 16-year-old girl laughter. She was sitting in the driver's seat of her car, door cracked, talking on speaker. I only caught a snippet before she saw me through the rearview mirror and killed the call mid-sentence. But I remember exactly what she said. "Well, if that gets me the promotion, I'll bring the wine." I didn't say anything then, just stood there like a ghost at the edge of a crime scene, surrounded by tools my hands had bought. I went back inside, made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't hitch, but something deep inside me unclenched like a switch flipped. I realized indeed moment I wasn't sad, I was curious, the kind of curiosity that doesn't seek comfort, but evidence. And it's funny, once you start looking, you see things that were there all along. The hotel shampoo in her gym bag, the way she started deleting texts, but not emails, the random, unexplained $126 charge from a high-end sushi place in a city she wasn't supposed to be in that week. But more than anything, it was her confidence. That sharp, smug smile when she'd say, "I'm doing this for us," as if I should be grateful for her strategic giggling. The worst betrayals don't start with cheating. They start with entitlement. And something about the way she started patting me on the shoulder like a good dog told me exactly how she saw me. Comfortable, harmless, irrelevant. She didn't see me as a threat, which was perfect. And because the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one pounding the table, it's the one quietly collecting receipts. I've never seen someone put on confidence like armor the way she did that night. She walked out of the bathroom in a navy dress that clung in places I hadn't touched in months. Hair swept into a bun so tight it looked sculpted, lips painted the shade of a calculated apology. "This is for a leadership dinner?" I asked, doing my best not to sound like I was choking on the question. She didn't look up, just fastened a delicate earring and said, "It's a formal event. They want us to dress for the role we want. The role being what exactly? Trophy consultant? She finally glanced at me, that tired smirk curling at the corner of her mouth. Please don't make this about you tonight. That's when the phone lit up. A message popped through. Her face softened. She smiled, real, unfiltered, and then, like clockwork, turned the phone upside down. No instinct to hide it. Just protocol. Habit. Who was that? I asked, already knowing. She grabbed her clutch. No one that concerns you. She meant it too. That was the chilling part. In her mind, this was already outside my jurisdiction. As she reached for her keys, I moved toward the door. You want me to drive you? They're sending a car, she said. Then almost kindly, like she was explaining adult matters to a child. Spouses aren't invited. It's a leadership thing. I stood there in the entryway, watching her disappear into the night like a scene from a movie where the credits roll too early. She didn't look back. It's a strange kind of silence, the kind that lives in a house when trust has left the building but the bills are still being paid. I made dinner, ate alone. Her seat stayed empty, her wine glass untouched. I stared at it like a man identifying remains. Around 10, I heard the front door open. Light footsteps. Her laugh, muted, controlled, maybe on the phone. I didn't move from the couch. She walked in, saw me, and froze for a heartbeat too long. Didn't expect you up, she said, sliding her heels off like she was stepping out of character. Didn't expect you back this early. She tossed her phone onto the console. It wasn't that late. I stood up, walked over, picked up her blazer from where she draped it over the chair, held it for a second. Then I leaned in subtly, like I was checking the fabric. It didn't smell like her, not perfume, not sweat, something unfamiliar, masculine, a cologne I didn't recognize. New detergent? I asked, holding it up like I'd found a clue in a murder mystery. She snatched it from my hands with a forced laugh. Jesus, you're paranoid. No, I said, stepping back. Paranoid would mean I think you're hiding something. I don't. I know you are. She stared at me. There was a flicker of something in her face. Fear? Guilt? No. Annoyance. I was the interruption to the version of herself she was building outside these walls. You're spiraling, she said calmly. This is exactly what HR warns women about. Jealous husbands who hold them back. And there it was, the shield, the weaponized victimhood. As if my discomfort with her being emotionally entangled with her superior was the real issue here, not the texts, not the late-night strategy calls on speakerphone in our bathroom, not the lipstick she reapplied at 11 p.m. before heading out for a team brainstorm. It wasn't that she didn't care, it's that she knew I couldn't stop her, and that thrilled her. I didn't fight that night. I let her have her story, let her pretend I was the paranoid, insecure husband clinging to outdated ideas of loyalty. But I slept on the couch, not because of anger, because I didn't want her scent on me anymore. I lay there in the dark, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to her footsteps upstairs, moving around the bedroom like she owned the place. And she did, every square inch, every rug, every curated candle, every neutral-toned wall hanging. She'd made this house a reflection of her image. But I was done living in a museum curated by someone who'd already replaced the security cameras with mirrors. The next morning, I didn't mention the cologne, I didn't mention the upside-down phone. I just asked, "So did the dinner help your chances?" And she smiled. "You could say that." And I did. I said it over and over again. In my head, you could say that, you really could. She never left things open. That was the first clue. Not the texts, not the thank you promises, or the pixelated evidence of a relationship that had outgrown deniability. Just the fact that her laptop, for the first time in 5 years, wasn't locked. She'd gone to shower. I was walking past the kitchen. The screen was glowing like a trap. Outlook open. Chat thread in full view. Either she was careless, or she thought I was too neutered to look. She was wrong. At first, I didn't process what I was reading. My eyes skimmed past emojis, office slang, and enough double entendres to power a TED Talk on HR violations. I scrolled back. Weeks of messages, midday, midnight weekends, all written in that tone people use when they think no one else will ever read it. Bold, shameless, performed. You're dressed today, wow. Distracted me all through the metrics meeting. Her. I wore it for the data, not the distraction. Him. If you get that position, I'll expect a private thank you. Her reply? Pick the wine. I'll bring the attitude. That was the line that froze me, not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. This wasn't an affair. This was an exchange. She hadn't just emotionally clocked out of our marriage, she'd pivoted to another currency entirely. I kept reading, found the inside jokes about coworkers, the way she referred to me when she bothered to, like I was a neutral object in the background. He's just comfortable, she wrote once. Stability matters at home. Risk belongs in the office. Stability. That was me. Her husband. The man who bought her first business suit, who proofread her resume before every interview, who stayed up reheating leftovers when her working late started becoming standard. Stability was code for harmless, unnecessary, boring. My hands didn't shake, not because I wasn't angry, because somewhere, deep down, I'd been expecting this. Maybe not in this exact format, but in tone, in volume, in the way she began pausing before answering "I love you," like she was toggling between tabs. The most damaging part wasn't the flirting, it was the confidence, the knowing arrogance of someone who'd rehearsed their defense in advance. If I confronted her, she'd play the same song, "You're being dramatic." It's just joking. You're not secure enough to handle me being respected at work. But I wasn't reading respect. I was reading bartering, political seduction, dressed up as empowerment. Do I still get that raise if I wear blue tomorrow? Sent. 9:42 a.m. Her title changed on the company website at 1:17 p.m. that same day. I checked the cache, screenshotted it, archived it. The timestamps told their own story, more reliable than any tearful denial or carefully crafted explanation she might try to sell me later. And he, her boss, he wasn't subtle either. "I can only do so much if you keep turning heads at these meetings," he'd texted. "You're becoming a distraction," and a delight. She responded with a winking gif. There were no pictures, no confessions of love, no "I miss you" or "can't wait to see you." That would have made it almost easier, human. No, this was a strategic campaign. She didn't want him. She wanted what proximity to him unlocked. And he, well, he was just happy to collect interest on the power he loaned out. It wasn't infidelity. It was ambition with a body count. I closed the laptop slowly, quietly. She was still in the shower, steam curling down the hallway, her voice humming some pop song, oblivious. I sat at the dining table and stared at the spot where we used to have coffee together on Sunday mornings, where she once told me, "You make me feel grounded." Now I knew she meant, "You make me feel stuck." Funny, isn't it? Men are always warned not to become too comfortable, to keep the spark alive, to stay interesting. But no one tells you what to do when the woman you love decides the spark's better used to light bridges behind her. She came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, towel on her head, scrolling her phone. "Hey," she said casually, "did you move my laptop?" I looked up from my tea. "Nope." She paused, narrowed her eyes for half a second, then smiled. "Weird. Must have auto-slept." She walked past me, kissed my cheek like a truce before a battle I wasn't supposed to know was happening. I didn't flinch. I let her go. She still thought I was asleep at the wheel. Good, let her think that. Let her keep playing checkers. I was about to flip the board. The invitation was addressed to Ms. L. Chambers and guest. She left it on the counter like a junk mail flyer, but I saw the way she adjusted her hair before she slid it under a magnet. Like the card had weight, like it meant she'd arrived. "So do I get to be your mystery plus one?" I asked that night, watching her rifle through outfits she never wore for me. She gave a soft, almost patronizing smile. "If you want to, it's mostly work people. I am capable of existing around work people, you know." She shrugged. "Just don't make it weird." Weird. That was the word she used for anything she couldn't control. Suspicion? Weird. Questions? Weird. A husband noticing that her late night calls lasted longer than her conversations with him? Definitely weird. I wore a tailored jacket. She didn't comment. She wore a red dress with a slit that declared war on subtlety. I didn't comment either. The venue was one of those converted art galleries downtown. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, staff who all looked like they hated the guests. We walked in together, but she peeled off within minutes, whisked away by some junior exec with hair gel and too much cologne. I was left standing next to the ornamental ice sculpture and a tray of crab cakes no one was touching. She floated through the room like she owned it, laughing louder than necessary, hand on arms, shoulder touches. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they physically occupy space around power. She wasn't networking, she was orbiting. And then he appeared, tall, smug, well-moisturized, her boss. I'd seen his face in internal Zoom captures she forgot to close, always with that little upturned mouth, the kind that's used to giving instructions, not answering questions. He walked right up to us like he'd just been summoned, extended his hand. "You must be the husband," he said, voice syrupy. I shook his hand, firm, intentional. "And you must be the reason she keeps wearing blue." He chuckled, too hard. "She's a rising star. We're lucky to have her." Then he turned to her, without a pause, and placed his hand gently, familiarly, on her lower back. Just enough pressure to signal something. Just enough duration to ensure I noticed. She laughed like it meant nothing. I watched like it meant everything. He walked away. She turned to me, smile still painted on. "Don't start," she whispered. "Didn't say anything." "You're doing that face." "What face?" "The one that says you're turning this into a thing." I didn't argue. I didn't sulk. I got a drink. I watched. I waited. You see, that night was important because that's the night I stopped trying to feel anything and started recording everything. That was the night I realized my value to her had expired. I was no longer the partner. I was the audience, the prop, the piece of furniture she needed to keep her image intact. So I decided to become something else entirely. I spent the rest of the evening quietly taking mental notes. Who she touched, who touched her, how many times her phone buzzed, and she checked it under the table, eyes darting, thumb quick. I watched as her boss leaned in, whispered something, and she laughed, head tilted, fingers brushing his sleeve. That's not how coworkers laugh. That's how politicians pretend things didn't happen. We drove home mostly in silence. She hummed along to a Christmas song on the radio. At one point, she glanced over. "You okay?" "Never better." "You seemed off." I shrugged. "Just tired of crab cakes." She didn't push. She assumed she'd won the conversation by default. But I wasn't playing conversation anymore. I was playing chess. That night, when she fell asleep, I got up and took her phone from the nightstand. I didn't open it. I just looked at the model number, the case, the smudge pattern on the screen, then I replicated it. The next day, I bought the same model, installed a mirrored app on an account she didn't use anymore, one she'd signed up with 5 years ago for an online tax prep service. She'd forgotten it existed, I hadn't. I began taking photos of her planner, her calendar invites, her expense reports. One evening, I asked offhandedly, "Do you still have that travel charger you took to the Miami conference?" She looked confused. "What charger?" "Exactly." I opened a note on my phone, added a line, "No Miami charger and luggage." 2 weeks later, a credit card charge showed up. Spa, Miami Beach. Date, same as the conference. Listed under his name, not hers. I printed it, filed it, indexed it. She thought I was sulking. But I was documenting. She thought I was jealous. But I was building a case. The difference between weakness and patience is just a matter of intention. And my intentions had finally found purpose. She thought I was watching her walk away from our marriage. She never realized I was mapping the exit route, brick by brick, timestamp by timestamp. Because when she finally tripped over her own ambition, I wasn't going to catch her. I was going to make sure the fall was measured. The receptionist offered me coffee. I said yes, even though my hands were already buzzing from the 2 I'd had on the way there. She smiled like she knew I wasn't really thirsty, just looking for something to hold, while I lied to a stranger about why I was in an employment lawyer's office. He was younger than I expected. Slick hair, clean suit, a little too friendly. He'd probably seen worse than me, men sweating through their shirts trying to avoid the word divorce. But I didn't say anything about marriage. I said it was about a friend. My friend suspects his wife is in, let's call it a compromised professional relationship with her superior, I began. He leaned back slightly, nodded like a man who's heard a euphemism or two. I continued. There's a pattern, promotions linked to private dinners. suggestive messages, nothing overtly open, but there's an implication. A trade, maybe. My friend wants to know if this kind of thing, if it can be considered exploitative. By your friend, you mean you, he said flatly. I didn't answer, just smiled, polite. He returned the smile with something harder. If a superior uses power or influence to pursue a subordinate, whether it's accepted or not, it's a risk for the company. Liability, especially if the subordinate benefits directly, raises, promotions, bonuses, altered evaluations. I nodded slowly. Even if the subordinate is willingly complicit? He tilted his head. Willingness doesn't eliminate power imbalance. And companies care less about ethics and more about exposure. That word, exposure, it rang like a bell. Not punishment, not morality. Exposure. That's what scared corporations. Not wrongdoing. Being seen doing wrong. I left the office with no forms, no invoices, just knowledge, a clearer sense of the battlefield. That night, I went back into the folder, the one I'd been building on my locked drive. Screenshots, PDFs, clipped timestamps from her Slack logs. I was careful. Everything dated, nothing tampered, and then I reread that thread. Her. Can I still get that raise if I wear blue tomorrow? Sent at 9:42 a.m. His reply came less than 2 minutes later. You wear anything you want. The decision's practically made. That afternoon, her title updated on the internal directory. Director of Client Strategy. Before, she was a senior consultant, no announcement, no formal email blast, just a quiet switch like someone flipped a light and didn't expect anyone to notice. But I noticed. Her LinkedIn changed 4 hours later. Celebratory post, 84 likes, 5 comments calling her an inspiration. She didn't mention the blue dress, or the emoji, or that she'd left the office that day 2 hours early according to her calendar. Location set to Offsite Strategy Sync. I opened the PDF of her expense report. There it was, $87 at the Mercer Club, 2 entrees, 1 bottle of wine, same date, 4:37 p.m. I cross-checked it with his report. His assistant had posted their monthly dining breakdown to the shared portal. Bless careless admin uploads. Same place, same date. Slightly earlier timestamp, they were there, together, just staggered enough to look separate on paper. I printed everything. That was the moment, the exact second I stopped being her husband, not emotionally, tactically. I wasn't confronting her. I wasn't seeking an apology. I wasn't dreaming about how things used to be. I was now a witness, building a case against a 2-person conspiracy cloaked in consensual suggestion. Because the moment she tied career mobility to performative intimacy, she stopped being a wife. She became a risk profile. And he became an H crisis in a nice suit. It was never about cheating. Not really. Cheating is emotional, sloppy, messy. This was organized, is measured, policy-proof, except it wasn't, because every company claims they're fine with workplace relationships as long as they're disclosed. But what happens when they're not, when one party benefits and the other one disappears from the org chart days later? I knew what would happen. The company would protect itself. They always do. But someone had to nudge the spotlight. The next morning, I bought a new burner phone, not to track, not to call, just to store and forward. I set up a clean Gmail account, unlinked, encrypted, and I started organizing the files by incident. I labeled them the way she used to label her client decks: Q1 alignment, mid-year review, promotion timeline, and, of course, leverage. Because if there's one thing she taught me, really taught me, it's that every favor comes with a receipt. And every career move made in a closed room eventually echoes in a public hallway. I just had to open the door. It wasn't rage, not anymore. By the time I clicked send, my pulse was steady. I wasn't fantasizing about confrontation. I didn't need screaming matches or slamming doors or some climactic TV monologue. That kind of heat burns fast. This required something colder, cleaner, something that wouldn't leave my fingerprints. I spent a full week assembling the document. Not a folder, a single pristine PDF, 28 pages long. Page 1, a table of contents, like any professional report. Because if you want to be taken seriously, you don't send a dump, you build a case. I titled it, Internal Power Imbalance, Summary of Events and Supporting Documentation. Sounded sterile, boring, just enough to make a compliance officer lean in, not scroll past. Page 2. Timeline of promotions within her department. Circled in red, hers. Page 3. Screenshots of Slack messages, each with metadata preserved. No cropped images, full context. Highlighted segments where flirtation veered into performance-based rewards. My personal favorite was from a Thursday morning thread. Her, bringing coffee to your office today. Hope that earns me extra points. Him, depends what else you're willing to earn. A week later, her project budget doubled. Page 4. Expense reports, restaurant overlaps, same venues, same days, split timing. Cross-reference against calendar invites where one of them mysteriously marked themselves off-site strategic lunch. Then came the performance reviews. That was key. I gained access, legally, publicly, through a company portal meant for peer feedback transparency. Her pre-promotion review was lukewarm, collaborative, but inconsistent under pressure. The next one, leadership material, elevated maturity and strategic focus. No documented change in client output. No new certifications, just proximity. Then the real gem, an internal newsletter dated 4 months earlier. A culture of meritocracy, our commitment to fair leadership practices, signed by the VP of HR and 2 board members. Guess who got the final version of the PDF? Yep, subject line, power imbalance, for internal review. Recipients, HR director, general counsel, 1 board member from diversity and ethics, 1 from M&A because nothing makes people nervous like instability in leadership optics before a merger. I sent it from the anonymous email I'd created, routed through a Swiss server just to be safe. Encrypted, password protected. I even made the password ironically poetic. Blue dress 22. I didn't include a note, no angry husband manifesto, no finger pointing, just a line at the bottom of the last page. This document highlights a pattern of preferential treatment, potential coercion, and systemic exposure risk, all sourced from internal communications, publicly accessible reports, and time-stamped records. Please consider this for immediate internal review. That was it. No name, no signature, just the facts. And the moment I hit send, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. It wasn't revenge. It was a realignment of the scales. She had used power, his and hers, as a ladder. She flirted strategically, positioned herself like a pawn trying to sleep her way across the board until she became a queen. And him, he thought he was smart enough to do it quietly, privately, in the gray area HR avoids because it means confronting people with money. But I didn't send it because I hated her. I sent it because I knew how corporations work. They don't care about betrayal. They care about exposure, leverage, brand damage, and nothing screams risk like unsanctioned relationships with dotted line power structures. You want to shake a system? Don't yell at it. Whisper something terrifying in a tone too calm to ignore. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, made a sandwich. She was upstairs, probably replying to one of his messages. I didn't check. I didn't need to anymore. I wasn't trying to win her back. Or catch her red-handed. That part of the story was done. Now it was just about letting gravity do its thing. You stack enough weight on a lie, eventually it collapses. The email wasn't explosive. It was architectural, load-bearing. And now the structure was groaning. She left that morning humming. It was a Tuesday. The day she usually wore her hair tied up tight and her heels just a little higher. Client visibility, she used to call it. Now I knew it was part of the costume, the kind worn by people who've convinced themselves they're untouchable. She was sipping her protein smoothie while texting. Probably him. The corners of her mouth curled up. Not a smile, but that smug, practiced expression she reserved for moments she felt in control. And why wouldn't she feel that way? Her LinkedIn still flaunted the promotion. Her direct reports still CC'd her on decisions she didn't fully understand. And her boss, still mentoring her, still liking her posts within 60 seconds of them going up, still calling her the future of the firm. In meetings, she made sure to record. At 8:17 a.m., she kissed my cheek on her way out. Big strategy session today, she said. Don't forget to wear blue, I replied, without looking up from my coffee. She laughed. God, you're still on that? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That line didn't belong to her anymore. It was in the file. Filed, forwarded, frozen in context. She left. I watched her drive away like I was watching the last 5 minutes of a movie I already knew the ending to. At 11:04 a.m., I checked the leadership portal on her company's intranet. Her name had been there every week for the past 3 months. Third from the top, just below her bosses. I checked it again, refreshed the page, gone. No memo, no reshuffle announcement, just deleted. At 11:47 a.m., I checked the Our Team page on the public site. Her picture, professional, serious, slightly too airbrushed, was replaced with a generic silhouette. By 1:30 p.m., she still hadn't noticed. She was quiet in our group chat with her sister. No client lunch selfies, no humble brags about late nights with the exec team, radio silence. But her boss, he went into full Houdini mode, his Twitter account deactivated, his Instagram set to private. His name was quietly removed from 2 upcoming panel events listed on the industry conference website. Corporate disappearing acts don't involve gunshots, just silence and a scrubbed archive. At 3:16 p.m., she texted me, "Have you been on the company site lately?" I waited 6 minutes before replying. "Nope, should I be?" 2 dots appeared, then disappeared. At 4:29 p.m., my phone rang. "Hey," she said, voice tight. "Hey, I think something's going on. Yeah? I think I'm being set up." There it was, the pivot, the first breath of panic. "By who?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Someone in legal. HR's not responding to me. And Gerald hasn't returned any of my calls or emails." Gerald. Her boss. The man who once messaged her, "Wear the blue, it's a power move." Now, no response. No messages, no cover, no shield. "Well," I said, setting my mug down, "maybe he's just busy, strategy sessions and all." "Don't," she snapped, then caught herself. "Sorry, this feels targeted, like someone's orchestrating it." "Or maybe," I said slowly, "the company just found something they couldn't ignore anymore." Silence. "Do you know something?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I let the question hang, the way she used to let my suspicions hang, unanswered, as if they were beneath her. "Babe," she pressed, "you remember when you said it was harmless?" I asked. "Just office politics, just flirtation?" Of course I remember, but that's all it was. Right, because promotions usually come with wine dates and dress codes. Her breath caught. "What did you do?" she said, hard now, demanding. But there was a tremble in it. I kept my tone calm, like I was reading a weather report. "I didn't do anything. I just forwarded some documents. Internal ones. The kind companies say they want to see, but never expect to actually arrive." "You sent them what?" "I sent them proof, Lauren." "You're not HR," she hissed. "Nope," I said, "but they are." There was a long pause. I could almost hear the calculations slamming into each other behind her eyes, the reshuffling of stories, the inventory of potential scapegoats. "You know what this could do to my career?" she finally said. I didn't answer, because I knew what it had already done. "Gerald said it would be discreet," she whispered. And there it was, the confession. Not full, not framed, but enough. Enough to burn the last filament of denial. He said HR didn't need to know, that it was just our secret. "Secrets don't make you valuable," I said. "They make you vulnerable." She exhaled sharply. "I can't believe you would turn on me like this." "No," I replied. "You turned first. I just turned the lights on." She hung up. I stood at the window for a long time, watching nothing. The street, the sky, the reflection of a man who used to be in the dark. The woman I married had been erased from her job in the span of a day. And the man she bet her future on, he vanished before she could even ask why. There was no press release, no drama, just silence. That's the sound careers make when they fall through trap doors. No echo, just the thud. She slammed the door hard enough to make the picture frames rattle. "You did this," she spat, dropping her bag on the hardwood like it was rigged to explode. I looked up from my book, not because I cared what she had to say, but because I wanted to see how she wore the collapse. Her blazer was wrinkled, one heel was off, and her mascara had smudged in a way that wasn't quite crying, but had flirted with the idea. She pointed a finger at me. "Don't act innocent. You think I don't know?" I said nothing, just raised an eyebrow. She hated that. Silence was my new language, and it was driving her insane. You sent that email, she hissed. The HR leak, the files, that was you. I turned a page. What files? Her jaw clenched. You're really going to sit there and pretend? I shrugged. You always said I was boring. Thought I'd stick to the character. She let out a dry laugh. Bitter, guttural, too loud. Do you have any idea what you've done? What I've built? That role was everything. No, I said calmly. It wasn't. Gerald was everything. The role was just the accessory. She stormed past me, muttering, "Unbelievable," and disappeared into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. It stayed shut for hours. No movement, no footsteps. Just silence thick enough to chew on. Around 8:47 p.m., her phone vibrated on the counter. She wasn't near it, so I saw the screen light up. The call was from a no-caller ID, but the preview text flashed. Voicemail, 1 minute, 22 seconds. Curiosity didn't kill me. It confirmed everything. She came out 10 minutes later, barefoot, eyes slightly red, her phone in her hand, her expression, not fury, not denial, fear. They put me on leave, she said, voice barely audible, effective immediately, pending internal review. I didn't flinch. Shocking. I'm not allowed on the premises. HR said they'll reach out. I nodded slowly. Must be serious. She sank onto the couch like her bones had turned to liquid. They said I'm a liability. Me. Her voice cracked on the last word, like she couldn't believe it. Like the system she'd played so well suddenly treated her like everyone else. She looked up at me. They called it an imbalance. That's what it was. She studied my face, scanning for some softness, something to cling to. There was nothing. Gerald stepped down, she said, like it was a question, like she wanted me to fix that part. To pursue other opportunities, I replied. Isn't that the phrase? She swallowed hard. He's not answering me. No one will, I said, because they're not protecting you anymore. They're protecting them. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked it away. She wasn't ready to cry, not in front of me, not when she still thought this might be salvaged with the right spin. You don't understand, she whispered. I finally put the book down. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand you rode a man's influence like a ski lift, thinking the slope beneath you wouldn't melt. I understand you mistook strategy for immunity. And now you're shocked the house of cards collapsed when someone opened a window. You're acting like I slept with him, she said defensively. I never said that, I replied, but thanks for confirming it was an option. She flinched, not visibly, just enough that her neck stiffened. This wasn't some big plan, she said. It was leverage. Everyone does it. You think I'm the only one who plays the game? No, I said. I think you're the one who lost. She stood up. What, you think you're better than me now? Because you played vigilante for a week and ruined my life. No, I think I'm the one who remembered this was never just your life to ruin. She stared at me for a long time, like she was trying to locate the man she married inside the one standing in front of her. But I was gone, replaced, not colder, just clearer. She walked past me, slow this time. No fire, no theatrics, just quiet steps into the guest room. The one we used to save for out-of-town visitors. The one I'd kept ready. I sat down on the couch again, picked up the book, read the same sentence 3 times before finally turning the page. The war wasn't over. But the air had changed, the shield was gone. And the silence, it finally belonged to me. The envelope was thick but silent when I dropped it on the kitchen counter. Legal documents are like that, quiet weapons. 2 weeks after the HR call, after the keycard deactivation, after the thank you for your service email that didn't even include her last name, I filed, not with a bang, no final blowout, no exposed affairs or scorched earth, just a signature, clean, almost clinical. When she saw it, she froze, not like in the movies, no glass slipping from her hand, no dramatic gasp, she just stopped moving. Like the body forgot what to do when the story you thought you were writing gets rewritten by someone you never considered a threat. You filed, she said after what felt like a full minute. I did. Her fingers hovered above the envelope, but she didn't touch it, as if paper could bite harder than truth. You didn't even talk to me. I shrugged. We haven't talked in months. I mean really talk. Oh, you mean like the talks you had with Gerald? At the Mercer Club? At that hotel in Miami with the executive suite and the spa charge you claimed was a wellness stipend? She looked up, startled. That name again. Gerald. It hit different now that he was pursuing other opportunities in the HR netherworld. Jesus, you were tracking me? No, you just left enough breadcrumbs to choke a pigeon. She turned away, biting her lip like that might keep the words in. Then she spun around, fire rising again. You threw away our marriage for revenge? I smiled, not cruel, but something colder. No, you threw it away for a title. I just refused to keep pretending we still had one. She went still again. That look, like the lights were on but nobody inside wanted to answer the door. You don't understand, she said softer now. This wasn't about intimacy, it was about opportunity. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's exactly what HR said. Her face crumpled for just a second. Not enough for tears, just the scaffolding beginning to crack. I didn't mean for it to become all this, she added, voice smaller. It got messy. No, I corrected. It got real. She moved to sit down like this conversation had the weight of a confession booth. I didn't move to join her. You think it was easy for me? She asked. Being a woman in that environment, always having to play the game? Then why did you make me the board you played it on? That landed harder than I expected. Her mouth opened, then closed again. No script left. You knew the risk, I added. You just thought I was too domesticated to light the match. She looked around the kitchen like she was trying to find proof this was still her home. But the house was different now. The quiet was sharper. The shadows didn't feel neutral anymore. I sacrificed a lot, she said finally. I was doing it for us. You lied for you. You wore the ring while practicing exit strategies. You had meetings behind curtains and called them milestones. You didn't sacrifice, you invested. And the second the ROI dipped, you called it growth. She covered her face with one hand. So what now? We just end? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. We ended when I became an obstacle instead of a partner. Silence. That silence. That was the real reckoning. Not her sobbing, not the apology I knew wouldn't come. It was the vacuum left behind when everything she built, her curated image, her lean-in speeches, her boss's empty compliments, evaporated. She wasn't being escorted out of a company anymore. She was being removed from my life. She finally picked up the envelope. What happens if I don't sign? You delay the inevitable. And if I do, you make it less humiliating. She stood there for a long time, clutching the envelope like maybe if she held it tight enough it would rewrite itself. I loved you, she said, voice barely audible. I believed you, I said back. And that was worse. She didn't follow me when I walked upstairs. No footsteps behind me, no begging, just the sound of paper sliding back onto the counter. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't. She sat on the couch until the sun came up, staring at the manila folder like it had murdered her. But it wasn't the document that killed what we had. It was the silence she filled with strategies when she could have used truth. Her empire wasn't built on love, it was built on implication. And as it finally collapsed under the weight of someone who stopped being afraid to speak. I waited exactly 2 weeks. Not because I needed time to think, I'd done all the thinking months ago, but because there's something poetic about letting things settle before you draw the final line, like watching dust fall after a demolition. You wait, you breathe, and then you send the invoice. The company made it easy, no questions, no lawyers, no denials, just silence, clean and corporate, the kind that comes with severance packages and NDAs typed by people who know how to bury a story before it grows legs. They'd sanitize the whole thing like it never happened. One removed profile picture, one ghosted conference invite, one career relocated to nowhere. But I knew that silence wasn't gratitude. It was a truce. So I ended it formally. I opened a new email, same anonymous account I'd used before, same burner laptop still sitting in the drawer under my old tax documents. I kept it unplugged, clean, just for this moment. To HR director, legal department, board oversight, subject, final confirmation, one still standing attached, a single screenshot, a message I'd saved for last, the one that said it all without needing context or captions. Gerald's message to her, timestamped 2 months before the first raise, 3 weeks before the promotion, and 1 day after their first off-site lunch. We should keep this quiet. HR doesn't need to know how close we are. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even explicit, but it was enough for any trained compliance officer to wince, enough to remind them that their cleanup job had a mirror. No accompanying message, just one line in the body of the email. Thank you for your swift action. I clicked send, and that was it. Not a door slam, not a mic drop, just the final tick on a checklist written in sarcasm and survival. The story wouldn't trend. There would be no viral Reddit thread, no podcast episode, no whisper campaign at networking mixers. Because this wasn't a story built for noise, it was designed for silence. She never knew about that final email. I didn't need her to. Her war was already over. No severance, no references, just a frozen LinkedIn and a gap in her resume she'd have to decorate with buzzwords. As for Gerald, last I heard, he was consulting independently. That's corporate speak for no one will touch him, so he's pretending it's by choice. Our house sold quietly. I took the smaller cut. Didn't fight. Let her think she walked away with something. It's easier to move forward when they believe they won. The morning after she signed the final paperwork, she texted me, "Can we ever talk?" I stared at it for a while. Then I replied, "We did, you just didn't listen." I blocked the number, deleted the thread. Later that night, I poured a drink and opened a new doc. Blank page, no subject line, no attachments, just space. For once, the silence wasn't a punishment, it was peace, because the best revenge isn't loud. It's finished.